Okay, so it is being recorded. Okay, I'll put my slideshow at full screen. Okay, so welcome everyone to this virtual community meeting to discuss NPA 2024-0015.02. If you haven't done so already, if you could let us know who is here in the chat. If you're associated with an organization, if you could provide that name as well. If you can mute your microphone if you haven't done so already, and turn off your video if you're participating online to save bandwidth. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the publicinput.com/neighborhood plan amendment cases website. If you do not want your image viewed publicly, please turn off your camera. As you know, the property is in the East MLK Combined Neighborhood Planning Area, the Pecan Springdale part of the plan. Mark Walters will be the meeting facilitator tonight. My name is Maureen Meredith. I am the Plan Amendment Case Manager, and Jonathan Tomko is the Zoning Case Manager, and this is our contact information. Jonathan will not be participating tonight in the meeting, but if we have any zoning questions that either Mark, myself, or the applicant cannot answer, we will be able to get back to you after we talk to Jonathan, and we can deal with that if it comes up at the meeting. The agenda tonight, I'll go over basic case information, guidelines for group discussion, how to participate in this process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map, also called a FLUM. After my presentation, April Romero Brown will do a presentation going into more detail about the proposed plan amendment and zoning case. Then we'll go into the Q&A session of the meeting. Property addresses are 3016 East 51st Street, 3021 and 3039 Pecan Spring Road. It is 2.285 acres. The plan amendment case number is NPA 2024-0015.02. The project name is Alpha Seventh-day Adventist Church. The FLUM request is to change the future land use map from mixed residential to mixed use land use. The associated zoning case number is C14-2024-010, actually 04, not 09. C14-2024-0104. The request is to change the zoning from SF3 Family Residence District Neighborhood Plan to GRMUNP, which is Community Commercial District, Mixed Use Combining District Neighborhood Plan. The property owner applicant is Southwest Region Conference Association of Seventh-day Adventists and Southwest Region Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. The agent is Michael J. Welling and April Romero Brown from Armbrust and Brown. The guidelines for group discussion, please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during this meeting. If you could postpone general comments during the Q&A session after staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol on the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session of the meeting, and we'll call out the last 4 digits of your phone number. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then we will open the meeting to any Q&A in this or any questions in the chat. If you have any connection issues, please turn off your video until called upon to speak, and we ask that you be respectful to each other during the discussion. As I mentioned, the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to this website. You can email or call me and Jonathan with any questions or comments that you have. If you provide written comments, they'll be included in the staff case report. When the cases are scheduled for Planning Commission and City Council, if you live within 500 feet of the property, you'll get a notice in the mail, and it will have instructions on how to participate in the public hearings. So why is there a plan amendment? Neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan, and the city charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Most neighborhood plan amendments are changes to a future land use map, and most have an associated zoning application. So this map shows areas that have City Council approved neighborhood plans, and those are shown in blue. This one is in the East MLK neighborhood planning area. These planning areas have a plan document that have the vision and goals of the planning area. and most of which also have a future land use map. So the future land use map has colors that represent broad land uses. For example, this property has an existing land use of mixed residential, which is sort of the salmon color, and the proposed is mixed use, which is represented by the color brown. This is sort of zoomed in of where the property is. It's on the north side of East 51st Street, and you see Pecan Springs running to the east side of the property. This is an aerial photo that has the future land use map overlaid. So you can see the yellow is single family. You can see that to the west, there is some mixed residential to the east and some to the south. Here's a zoning map. Again, it shows the zoning is, the property is zoned SF3 NP. You have some SF2 to the west and to the north, SF3 to the east, and some SF3 and some multifamily zoning to the south. This is a Google map screenshot that shows the property. And this is just a Google Maps street view screenshot of the property. Here is the Imagine Austin growth concept map, and these colors and blobs on the map represent regional centers, town centers, neighborhood centers, and also activity corridors, which are shown on the map, sort of a zoomed in of that growth concept map. The activity corridors are shown in sort of the pale yellow with the brown outline. So East 51st Street is an activity corridor. You can see Springdale Road to the right is also an activity corridor. You see Manor Road to the left is an activity corridor, and the property is to the east of the Mueller Station Town Center. This shows the public transportation in proximity to the property. And that ends my presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen. Let's see if I can get to that. And then April can share her screen and begin her presentation.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me get that shared. Okay. I think, are we showing it? Are we doing it? Is it going?
It is now.
Yeah.
Okay. Oops. 1 second. Okay. Give me just a second. Okay. Sorry, I've got my multiple monitors going, so I had to figure out where I was at. Thank you, Maureen, for that overview, and thank you to staff for the work that they are doing on this case. My name is April Romero Brown, and I am here representing the applicant, Alpha Seventh-day Adventist Church. I am joined tonight by Michael Whalen, who is also from Armbrust and Brown, as well as Judge Eric Shepard, who is one of the lay leaders of the church. Let's see. There we go. Oh, too far. As you heard from Maureen, we are seeking an amendment to the existing neighborhood plan in order to change the church's designation on the future land use map, or FLUM, from mixed residential to mixed use. We are also seeking to rezone the property from single-family zoning, which this is not, to community commercial mixed-use zoning. Our request would bring the property's land use designations into alignment with its current use as a church, and provide the church with the appropriate site development regulations to accommodate future growth and changes of needs. And I'll go through these quickly because Maureen gave a very similar overview. So this is just the aerial to show you the church's location along in between 3 of the neighborhood's main corridors. That's Manor Road, East 51st Street, and Springdale Road. This is a zoom-in version of the terrain of that same aerial, and it shows you what exists today. You have the church, its existing parking lot, a paved parking lot, a grass and dirt lot in the back that is used for additional parking, and a single-family home.
This is like parsonage.
And here it's the same view that Maureen, she does her job so well. I don't have to do mine. It just shows you what you see from the corner of 51st and Springdale. And I want to note here that the church does not have plans to redevelop the existing structure or to sell the property. The rezoning and the Flum Amendment simply seek to give church leadership the flexibility to accommodate growth, allow for improved access, and to be able to respond to future needs of the church that single-family zoning does not allow. Again, very similar to what Maureen took you through, this is the existing future land use map. You can see to the west and to the east, there are the brown mixed use designated tracts, which ours would come into alignment with. The yellow is the single family, which you see exists in these interior single family neighborhoods. You see some of the cul-de-sacs there. And here is a similar zoning map. You can see that the church, as we have mentioned, is currently zoned for single family, while the nearby commercial and office spaces that were the same mixed use tracts we just saw are appropriately zoned for commercial and office zoning. As I mentioned at the beginning, our request simply brings the church's designations into alignment with how the property is already being used, and it is also cohesive with the goals and objectives that are set forth in the existing neighborhood plan. So we've pulled this text word for word from the neighborhood plan, and I will go through them and provide some additional context for how each of these goals and objectives apply to this rezoning request. The first is Goal 2, promote a mix of land uses that respect and enhance the existing neighborhood and address compatibility between residential, commercial, and industrial uses, which is supported by Objective 2.1, which says where appropriate, address mismatches between the desired land use and zoning. So here, we've already discussed there's a mismatch, not between the desired, but the already existing land use and the zoning, as it is single family, and we are seeking to remedy that mismatch. I also want to state here that with respect to compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood, we are also seeking a conditional overlay that will restrict the commercial uses on the site to less intense uses allowed in neighborhood commercial zoning. So we are seeking an overlay that will restrict more intensive uses like auto repairs, auto sales, bail bond services, convenience, storage, and the like. Goal 4, promote the development and enhancement of the neighborhood's major corridors, which is supported by Objective 4.1, allow mixed-use development along major corridors and intersections. Of course, as you know now, we are seeking mixed-use future land use designation to allow the church to have more flexibility while also allowing the existing single-family home on the property to continue to exist. The updated designations will allow for better use of the site, which we've discussed. And of course, it is along the East 51st Street corridor. And finally, Goal 6, protect and enhance historic resources and structures and preserve the area's historic and cultural character. While the church is not historic, at least not yet or at this point in time, it is part of the cultural fabric of the community. It has been there for several decades, and allowing the site to be recognized appropriately in its land use regulations will help the church to continue operating in its location smoothly as it grows and as needs arise on the site. So to recap quickly, we are seeking to amend the future land use map designation from mixed residential to mixed use. We are also seeking an accompanying rezoning from single family to community commercial zoning with restricted commercial uses. And not only will our request provide the church with the appropriate land use designations and regulations, it is also in alignment with several of the existing goals and objectives in the East MLK neighborhood plan. And that is my presentation. Thank you all for your time and attention. I am available for questions.
Thank you, April. This is Mark Walters, and Maureen said at the beginning of the meeting I'll be facilitating tonight. But before we go on with any new questions, there's several have already been asked in the chat. The first is from and forgive me if I get your last name incorrect, from Nadia Barbat. Can the agent contact the neighborhood association? And that information is in the chat. And Maureen, if you could jot that down and pass it along to April when you get a chance, that would be really great. This is another one. This is another question from Emily Nobel. This land use zoning change goes well beyond what the church is designated for today. And please explain this. And I think you already did that, April. Would you like to add anything?
No, as I mentioned, the church is not looking to redevelop or sell the property. It is looking to be able to accommodate growth and have flexibility as needs change for this existing use.
The next question is from Robert Mendez. How does the current zoning not work for the church, which was built in accordance with the permitting by the city of Austin? Seems like they may have caught on to that. What improved access is needed, and considering the property is barely used?
Sure. So one of the things that the church is dealing with as its congregation grows with respect to access is just parking. As we pointed out, some of that grass lot in the back is used for congregant parking, and single family zoning does not allow them to expand to provide the paved parking that is needed.
Okay. And Robert Mendez goes on to note in question, says, I note that both the Baptist church across the street and the one down Pecan Streams Road has the same zoning as the Alpha Church. Again, please state how the property is being used that is not in alignment with the current zoning. Seems like a serious legal issue that needs to be fixed prior to asking for new zoning. Well, I can say that a church can be constructed in any zoning district,
yes,
but it has to adhere to the development regulations of that district. So in single family, it would be 40% building coverage, 45% impervious cover, building heights, and all your setbacks would have to apply, would be applicable to that what's allowed in that single families. From Nadia again, can we see a rendering of what is planned to be built with this updated zoning? Do you have any renderings as of yet?
No, we don't have a rendering at this time. That, like I said, there are no major plans. The church is considering expansion, for example, like the lot that I mentioned, that is not possible under the current zoning.
This is from Emily. The commercial office use space noted as an examples are on major street intersections. This property has frontage on a minor neighborhood street at the back of the property, lot. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think there may be some feedback coming from other microphones.
I think somebody doesn't have, but it is not muted.
No, you're.
Okay.
You're complaining if it doesn't exist.
I don't know if there's a way to mute just so that there's not I just don't want to interrupt if someone is asking something, but 51st Street in the neighborhood plan is identified not as a minor street, but as a major arterial. So I'll just note that. Mark, if you are talking, I think
I muted myself. Okay.
Yep.
It's not a meeting until somebody talks while they're muted. Robert Mendez asks, please state the commercial uses that you are currently active in, as you have stated multiple times that you want to align with the current use, not looking to redevelop or sell currently that can change tomorrow.
Sure.
So what conditional overlay were you thinking about?
Sure. We've already submitted this to the zoning director we are looking to limit the commercial uses on the site to those that are allowed in neighborhood commercial. The church does not have any additional commercial uses that are ongoing on the site. This request is an added protection and assurance to the neighborhood that you won't see any, even in the future, intense commercial uses. But as I mentioned, at this time, the church plans to continue to exist as a church and is seeking the flexibility to expand.
And for those who aren't familiar with our zoning code, neighborhood office is what you said. Neighborhood office has very few uses. I mean, literally a handful of uses, and they're pretty much office and church and a few others office type uses. The church has been in existence for 40 years. It appears to be in alignment with current zoning. That was from Robert Mendez. Do you have a comment for that, April?
Just as we've said previously, that the single-family zoning site development regulations don't give the church the flexibility to expand to accommodate the growing congregation.
Okay, and this is from Wendy Brannick. Please re-explain the overlay related to commercial portions of rezoning to mixed use.
Sure, happy to. So with the rezoning that we are seeking what is called community commercial, which in the city's zoning code do allow for what are considered to be some more intense commercial uses. So even though the church is not planning and has no plans to redevelop, we are seeking an overlay that would restrict the uses down to neighborhood commercial to assure the community that you aren't going to see uses such as I mentioned, auto sales and repairs, bail bond, convenience storage. I can, if I get a second, I can put a link to the code where you can see different uses that are allowed in the different zoning districts.
I'm pulling up the zoning guide right now,
and
we can show it in a second here. Let me pull it up.
Thanks.
And Emily says, if the issue is parking, is there a way to limit the usage to what is granted today? And I think you just went over the conditional overlay. I think you addressed her question. If the church wishes to pave the grass lot, what will they be doing to remediate the drainage issues caused, but such a vast amount of impermeable land? Grass lot is not fronting on 51st Street.
Sure. Well, any development which does include any paving of parking has to comply with current city code, which does have several different aspects of water quality and drainage requirements. So the redevelopment, if it were to happen, would either have on-site detention facilities as required by city code, or would participate in the city's regional stormwater management program, RSMP program, which is wholly dedicated to mitigating stormwater detention and flooding.
And this is from Nadia. I invite all other neighbors to take the email address that she put earlier in the chat that shared above. Happy to facilitate a further meeting with the agent and go into more detail. Well, thank you, Nadia. The next is from Robert Mendez. The vast amount of frontage is on Pecan Springs Road, a residential street. The property back lot is not on 51st, it's on Pecan Springs. And that was from Emily. Robert Mendez, the best assurance to the neighborhood is not to change the zoning. And I think you've covered why the church is requesting this zoning change. Specific detail of what you are requesting to be allowed to do with additional construction would be appreciated. The discussion has been very unclear. This is from Shirley Webster. What would be allowed under the proposed amended zoning beyond the discussed parking pavement? Well, first, and April, you can go on this, but I like to explain. Unless it's commercial parking where you go park your car and you pay a fee to park your car for a given amount of time. Parking is just something that's associated with the use, which is religious assembly or church or house of worship. and is not a use. It's simply something that is required because of either the volume of people who attend the church or for some other reason. And you could address the use part.
No, I think you hit that exactly. To the rezoning is necessary to have the accessory parking that is required to go with this as a use, and there are no other plans or considerations at this time for expansion.
Okay. And does Robert Mendez, how is the church looking to expand? Has there been no community outreach by the applicant? Why has there been no community outreach by the applicant? And the requested change has not been appropriately detailed. What is the church planning to do? And I think you addressed that. They plan to put in a parking lot to accommodate the parishioners. Does the limited use that you showed allow for medical office, hotels, convenience stores, general retail, or was that a different section of the use that was shown?
Good use. Sorry, I'm going to read that. Sorry, it's a limited use. It's based on what Maureen has up on the screen, and I apologize, I don't have all of the uses up here, but the medical offices, I suppose if the property far in the future were to redevelop, would be allowed under 5,000 square feet and would have to go through a conditional review for anything above that. But as I said, the church is not looking to sell or redevelop into something else. It is continuing on as a church and is simply seeking to expand in order to build additional parking for the congregation.
And okay, just from Robert again, seeing it's a properties already uses seeing that the church already uses the property as parking, why is there a need to change things now? Well, you're not allowed technically to park cars, trucks, etc., on an unpaved surface, whether it's for a house of worship, a retail or commercial use, or a single family house or apartment complex. All parking needs to be on some form of pavement.
Yeah, and the pavement there also helps with, as we talked about earlier a little bit with the detention and the runoff. It allows control of that runoff and any water quality issues such as the oil that may come from people parking there, that can be controlled rather than seeped into the ground.
This is from Joe. What has the growth rate of the church congregation, how quickly or not has the church's congregation grown over the last 3 years? And what is the current shortfall in parking? So how many more parking spaces do you need?
Sure. I don't have the answers to that. I know that Judge Shepard is with us. I also don't know if he's got that. Judge Shepard, if you happen to have that data, then absolutely feel free to share that. Otherwise, I can reach out to the church and see if we can get some numbers on the growth.
The growth has been pretty steady over the past few years. We've managed to not have as much of a problem as it would be after COVID. It went down, and now people are starting to come back to church as opposed to not watching online. We have some people watching online, and that helps us ameliorate the problem to some degree. But more and more people are starting to come back to church, and so we need to be able to do that. It's also really hard to walk in mud, and particularly if you're dressed up, to be honest. And we have to use that plate that we use the kitchen door backs onto for the place where we feed everybody once a month, backs onto the lot, and that gets really soggy really fast if it's a bad rain. So it's really about trying to get some more pavement and parking so that we can more easily have the church members not be in any kind of situations when they're coming into church through the back door.
Thank you. The next question is from Emily. Is the church willing to include further restrictions to exclude any commercial uses outside of a parking lot? Like I said
I'm happy to, sorry.
I was just going to say a parking lot, unless it's paid, whether you're storing a car there or paying to store your personal vehicle there, a parking garage is not a zoning use. It's a land development code thing. It's not part of the zoning code. So that's kind of, I just want to clarify that.
Well, I think, sorry, this is Emily. I think my question is pretty clear, though. Is there anything that can be done that the church is willing to do to further restrict that, but only allow for what they're saying they want to do, which is to pave the parking lot, which I understand.
And this is Robert Mendez, actually next door neighbor to Emily. And the bigger question I'm going to have here is, you've already stated, Mr. Walters, that there is no zoning change needed in order to pave this lot. That is a land development.
That's not true.
That's not
true. That's not true. Maybe I misspoke, but what I meant to say is to increase the impervious cover on the lot to accommodate the parking that the church is requesting. You do need to go to a different zoning district with a greater impervious cover level. Single family has an impervious cover level of 45%. And I don't know what the commercial is off the top of my head.
So given that, I guess I'll re-ask. So I understand, and I want to be really clear. I've lived here for 12 years. I really support the church. I think it's a great thing in general to have the church in the neighborhood. But is there anything that the church is willing to do to further restrict? Because the existing overlay restriction still seems pretty broad in terms of the use. So is there something that can be done where we can support it as a neighborhood? Obviously, I understand the needs for parking, but further limit.
Sure. If the neighborhood wants to, I can drop my email in the chat. And if you have additional uses that you would like to have restricted, I can take that back to the church. I'm putting my email in the chat.
Okay, April dropped her email into the chat. This is from Shirley Webster. Why doesn't the church use non-impervious ground cover that would allow for better parking than the current zoning?
As Mark mentioned, you still need the rezoning to allow for parking as a use. And as Judge Shepard mentioned, having the pavement allows for people to not have to walk through mud or through soggy surfaces, and allows for control over the drainage.
Y'all are just talking back and forth. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're saying one thing and then you're saying the opposite, and it's just not being clear at all. I mean, you say, well, parking is not a zoning issue, but all I'm saying is, look, you can have non-impervious ground cover, which seems to be the issue, is you can only have so much impervious ground cover in the residential. Well, you need non-impervious, which would not cause a problem, as I understand it, with the zoning, but the parishioners and avoiding having to walk in mud and so forth, which I perfectly understand is a reasonable request, but I don't understand why there can't be a reasonable compromise that would prohibit other types of commercial use should the church decide to sell in the future.
Parking, I think what Mark was talking about was the church as a use, which is allowed in single family. And Shirley, let me know if I think that was Shirley speaking, if I'm not answering your question. But parking as an accessory use, which would be the parking of cars on that, what is that existing grass and dirt or mud lot, is something that is it does not exist under single family zoning. And as I mentioned, I think it was Emily who brought this up. If there are additional uses that the neighborhood wants to restrict on the property, I am more than happy for y'all to email me, and I can take that back to the church leadership and then get back to you guys.
So you're open to saying you would restrict it to simply being an exception or an additional zoning to allow for this kind of parking you want to do?
I am open to taking back the restrictions that you want to take, that you want to restrict back to the church. I can't commit to that because I'm not the owner of the property, but whatever you guys want to request, I can commit to taking that to the church and then facilitating conversations around that.
Okay. So Robert is asking about saying crushed granite being an excellent option for a pervious paving surface. Maureen and I can look into what the regulations are pertaining to parking materials, and we can send that out to people who provided their contact information. Does that sound good with you, Maureen?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. That way you'll have what the code says. The neighborhood would want to restrict this is from Robert Mendez. The neighborhood would want to restrict us to simply a parking lot. Basically,
yes,
church and a parking lot.
Church and a parking lot. There's no need for a full commercial rezoning of this property when you want a parking lot. If that's really what you want to do, a zoning variance for the parking lot is all you need. The changes that are being requested vastly expand what the church is able to do on that land and impact the neighborhood.
No, a variance would be the first path of this to address this issue. The church is requesting is a zoning change. A variance is granted due to specific hardship created by the lot or something, some inherent aspect of the site that's requesting the variance, not
And
because
the inherent issue with the lot is that it's muddy. So it seems like there's reason for a variance.
But okay.
Yep.
And
just
also
to,
with
I'll
the
just,
go ahead.
yeah. I just gonna say to follow
Go
up on Mark's point, to get a variance, you have to go through a very strict quasi judicial process through the Board of Adjustment, and they have strict thresholds, and that's what Mark is speaking to in terms of the hardships that you have to meet, and a variance on whether something is muddy when you could get a rezoning is likely to not fly at the Board of Adjustment.
And with the conditional overlay, you can't limit just to one use, if I'm not mistaken. It has to be to at least a few uses. I don't know the number, but I know from my past experience that it's not one.
So I guess
that would be a
Mark,
Jonathan Topko question.
Yeah, maybe this is a question for you and Maureen, and maybe it's more for Jonathan, but I think what you're hearing, and that's an open from the neighbors on the call, right? Is there something within any zoning that exists that does not go to the extent of what is being requested here that would give the church what they need related to a parking lot? And I guess that's the open question.
I would need to do more. I can't just off the cuff.
Oh no, totally. No, I don't expect that answer, but I think that's kind of where we're swirling.
Right. And I'll speak to that again. So with the impervious cover and the building coverage being primarily, from my understanding, what is needed by the church, I'll go back to the church leadership after this meeting and talk to them about restricting the uses further. And I think that sounds like if we can come to an agreement on the restriction of uses, that would bring satisfaction to the neighborhood.
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of the whole neighborhood because I haven't talked to all the neighbors, but I think from my perspective, I certainly want to find a way to support the church because I very much support the church, but I want to try and find a middle ground where it doesn't go to the extent of what's being requested here, but still gets them a parking lot.
Sure.
Does anybody else on the call? Is there anybody who's phoned in? I don't believe so. Does anybody else have any questions that haven't been asked or any topics that haven't been brought up would you like to find out more information or ask your question? Hearing none, Maureen, do you like to go through the next steps in the process and let everybody know what they can expect moving forward, not including any discussions that the community might have with the agent and the church?
Okay. Yes. So the
I'm
next
sorry,
step.
Maureen, just a
Yes.
quick, I just wanted to say, we've needed this. I've been in Austin since 1982. I've been a member of this church since 1983. And we have tried our best to be good neighbors, and we think we are. And we're happy to have a conversation about what it is you all need to let us have the parking lot. But the parking lot's really, we've had it for a mud pit for a while, and we 20, 30 years, and we really would like to be able to stop that. And if there's a way we can do that, that's fine. We're happy to take a look at that to see if we can, in fact, accommodate what the neighborhood is asking for. But that's really what we're doing it for. We can't keep having people walk in heels all the way to the church.
No, and thanks for calling that out, Eric. You guys have been fabulous neighbors. So 100%. Thank you for calling that out.
And I don't think anybody at all is opposed to your parking lot per se. It's the request is far beyond a parking lot. So we're trying to figure out some way to write it out so that you get what you need, and we're not concerned about what else may happen in the future.
We're happy to have you come to the church. We're happy to have you be there. We like it as a church. A lot of our people drive in from a long way away because we like this as a church, and we like the neighborhood that it's in, and we'd like to stay and be able to accommodate what you've asked us to do.
So Maureen, do you want to go over
Sure.
next steps? And
Sorry, Maureen, I apologize.
That's okay.
oh
That's
no,
okay.
no.
So the next step, I will meet with my team and we'll make a recommendation on the request to change the future land use map. I'll report back to them the discussion at tonight's meeting, the questions and concerns from the neighborhood, the response from the applicant and the church, and I'll wait to hear back from y'all on any one-on-one meetings that y'all have specific to what you wanted to work out with the neighborhood. I'll work with Jonathan on trying to find out some answers to the questions about impervious, alternate parking services for parking lots, and also how to accommodate the parking lot without a zoning change, if that's possible. So there's that. After our team meets to make a recommendation on the future land use map, I'll forward that to the zoning team. They will meet separately to make a recommendation on the proposed zoning request. We'll keep Jonathan updated on any conversations y'all have. Once everything is settled and we look like we're ready to move forward to Planning Commission, we'll pick a date. And we'll let the neighborhood know what date we're looking at. We'll let you'll know any deadlines to send any comments or questions or letter recommendation. When those notices are sent out, if you live within 500 feet, you'll get them in the mail, and you can participate virtually in the meetings or in person. And the notice will have more information on that. Dates have not been picked out yet for Planning Commission, City Council, but we can keep you posted.
Okay, and anybody who wants information, or we can send it to the neighborhood association email. We'll have that in the chat for this meeting, and we'll send any and all information to that email address, as well as to anybody who's included their emails in the chat. So you'll send that information about parking. Before we go, April, would you have any closing comments?
No, I just want to thank y'all for your time and your questions. I hope they all understand why the rezoning is necessary based on the way the city processes work. And we are, as Judge Shepard mentioned, and as I mentioned, happy to have conversations about how to limit uses to provide the neighborhood with more assurance. This really is just the church looking to get more parking and to be able to walk on even ground. I put my email in the chat, and if y'all want to reach out to me, and if we want to schedule another meeting with Judge Shepard and with other church leadership to have more conversations, we are more than willing to do that.
And we expect to have that research on the parking at least within 2 to 3 days, business days. So look for it should be in your inbox in the next 2 or 3 days. That sound good to you, Maureen?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to wish everybody a good evening and thank you. I truly appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to come out and find out about this request. And I hope you have a good evening. And now we can get to our dinners.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time. I really do.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Mark.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll stop the recording.